Welcome to the GreatBase Tennis Podcast. I'm Steve Smith along with co-host Dave Anderson, talking to you about a learning opportunity. We're running a workshop December 18th to 20th. We're calling it the Tennis Golden Growth Opportunity. Our curriculum, we have 8 pillars. We've mentioned 6. We have 2 more to go. Bill Jacobson and Vic Braden. Dave, why don't you go first? Bill Jacobson and Vic Braden.
Both incredible human beings that have contributed to the tennis world. When I think of Bill Jacobson and CompuTennis, having the privilege to host a clinic for it back in the 80s at Courthouse Racket Club in Longview. Bill wasn't there. I think of how far ahead it was, and to have true data, statistical data to help analyze what's really going on the court. It's amazing to me that we haven't come that far, thinking back between then and now, and in terms of charting and utilizing data that's available. I know that it's become very sophisticated, but I'm not sure that the tennis industry, the coaching, the teaching is using it effectively to try to structure practices and what have you. And it really puts everything into perspective in terms of what kids can and cannot do, or players rather. And I think it's a guy who was just way ahead of the time. He was a Walt Disney kind of guy in how he thought about it. And I think that we owe him a great debt.
I remember Dave was in Tyler, but then with autonomy, we ran 2 clubs in a neighboring town, 2 small cities in East Texas. I can remember that like it was yesterday. Steve Abramson was working for Bill Jacobson. He came in, ran the workshop. And I remember it was the first time Timmy Hurst, he took a set from Chad Clark, or one of the first times. Timmy ended up playing at SMU. Chad played at Texas. It was another time, I think, Philip Farmer. Didn't he play at Oklahoma?
Yep.
We didn't coach him. I know he's a major personality, and I know he's coached the Bryan brothers, done a lot of things in tennis. And I can remember Timmy beating Philip and trying to tell Timmy and his father, George, who was a brilliant researcher. I said, the kid on the other side, he was just missing volleys and overheads he was forcing. We always say winning's not confusing. It's totally confusing. But Jacobson, certainly we've dedicated a podcast or 2 if you go back in the archives. But he would have 2 players play, and then he'd ask them afterwards. I remember one time taking a group to the Vic Braden Tennis College. Bill was there. I just picked 2 best players in the group, Sam Olson and Vic Diamond. Vic looked at me and goes, Steve, they're hitting the balls and running the wrong way. Because they were just 2 baseliners at 1/4. Very good players, especially Sam. Going back, I think Vic Diamond would have been on the winning edge of that. But to this day, it just baffles me. It's like Roger Federer saying verbatim, it's frightening how low the level play is at Wimbledon. I know that less than 2% of the time my opponents are coming in behind their serve. That's at Wimbledon. That's just hard to fathom. The sport I grew up in, ice hockey, people don't play doubles anymore. And it's like, they're playing the tour. Some of our best players. I mean, look how good Taylor Fritz is now. The way he serves, returns. And he's the one we'll say, he's self-deprecating about his volleys. Then you get on the podcast, you listen to Andy Roddick or John Isner, Sam Query. They're just openly going, I couldn't volley. And it's like, how could that be? Trying to think, what's the name of the kid from Tennessee? Likable guy, Tennis Sangren. I would never do this, but I was traveling with Austin Krajicek and Sangren when they're playing doubles together, and he was having surgery on, I think, both hips. He left his car at my place, and I said, hey, pro bono, when you come down here, and I'll help you with your volleys. And then, some time went by, and he played my son. And so I was with Anthony Fitzell and this kid, Ram Ramanathan, Arvin down. So we were running a practice at the Open. So we have to share a court. Who we have to share a court with is Tennis Sangren. So as I go up to him, going, what are you doing beating my kid so soundly? Laughing a little bit. He's playing the U.S. Open. I mean, he had 7 match points against the Fed. I mean, he's not chicken liver. So he says to me, I still can't volley, coach. It's like, you're warming up for the U.S. Open. You're practicing for the U.S. Open. What do you mean you can't volley? You got to get after it. You're only as strong as the weakest part of your game. Bill Jacobson, Vic Braden. On our course, Tennis Intelligence Supply, we mentioned over 100 coaches, but the 8 pillars, I always put really them 1 and 2. I mean, it's hard to rank anybody as far as their contributions, but as far as just as far as information, who has the most information? Bill Jacobson's way up there with the information he would share when he would dissect, he would break down a tennis match. But Braden, there's somebody that it's hard to even think about going paragraph, let alone a day, without a contribution from Braden. I mean, I always tell people that the people that we train, if they really know the language of what we put together, they can finish each other's sentences. But what comes to your name when we talk about Uncle Vic?
Well, again, within the last 48 hours, I just try to give people perspective like you do. And I had 3-4 kids on my court, and I was telling them, I think it was Saturday, because I got a little nostalgic with the 32 years. And I said, you got to remember when this academy began, there were no academies, number one. Number two, I said every person in this city taught people to bring the racket straight down. You know, the old racket back, bend your knees, that'll be $20, please. And it really, I credit it, Braden, through you, and then getting that information funneled into myself and many others. I said it's just, again, you talk about somebody who was just so far ahead of his time, and to some degree still is. I don't know what to say to people when they use words, and I don't hear about it directly. They tend not to, but like when you hear, that's old school, that's the classic game or whatever. But the guy was just he was way ahead of us, and we still have to catch up in our industry. And I think that organizations like the USTA need to give a lot more credit where it's due, because all the sports science that they are, claiming to be privy to, and it's really, it was brought into the light long ago by people like Vic. And it's just rare you run into people that have that kind of vision. On a personal note, I think of, you gave me the opportunity to go out to Koto once and work for free. I think it was a week. And it was an incredible experience. I'll never forget. But, I remember bringing my fiance, Jenna, at the time, my wife now for 38 years. And she and I were just sitting because it was a lunch break. And, I knew my place in the world, hopefully then, and just kind of sitting off to the side. And here comes Braden, with his lunch, and sat down and talked to us the entire time. And it was just like being at a family reunion with an uncle. The guy was just so down to earth and such a good human being. You could really just feel it in every word he said. And so I certainly, I wish I would have been able to spend as much time around him as you have, Steve. But the limited times that I have, I'm grateful for. But the knowledge all of us can still really take in each and every day, and continue to take it in, because no matter how many times you study it, you're going to pick something new out.
No, thanks for the input. Shout out to Melody, Vic's widow. She just recently went into an extended care, and all the best for her health. Some of her children are with her, which is great, and people from the Braden community are reaching out to her and writing her all the time. Coming back to Jacobson and Vic, numbers, it's just one thing. Anything that can be measured could be improved. But with Vic, here are some numbers that he wasn't so interested in. The $365 we're going to charge. I like the number. It's not so big, and there's 365 days in the year. We got another number, 24. This workshop we're going to run is 24 hours. Just the facts, long-term development, fact-based instruction for long-term development. But I've done this many times. It's just right up on the board. Higher, longer. Give me some reasons why you want to keep the racket higher, longer on your ground strokes, and then just to have the rationale. I think we're coaches. I play the heavy and go, hey, can you put your head on the pillow at night? And, or better yet, can you look a kid in the eye? Or you're doing your very best to help that kid with ball striking? Are you serving, through the knowledge you've acquired? Or are you serving others? But class acts, I think with Vic, I've always said, well, yeah, Braden's the Christmas tree. These other pillars are all stars. But the ornaments, with our content online, we're open to listening to many, many other coaches. And, teaching is both a science and an art. And you can always learn from everyone, whether it's just some buzzwords, some phraseology, drills. There's certain hard numbers that aren't going to change. Like what's your plus minus from a match? Granted, it depends on the accuracy of the charter, but with Vic, Braden math, I met with the former CEO of the USPTA, went down and said, hey, we need to run a Braden clinic. And it was right before COVID. It had been approved by this committee and that committee, but it's on me, because he said, well, you need to present this to the board. And it really should go back to the board to have a workshop. You could mention all these people, but a Braden workshop. How many people are like, 19.1 degrees, single score at 24.2. And then to build off of that, and build off that. I mean, how could you teach tennis if you don't really know the geometry of the court? And it's really not rocket science, but if one's never presented that information, and that's where it stands the test of time, because the laws of physics and the dimensions of the court, they're not changing anytime soon. But Bill, I think it's the aggressive air margin, for example. And Carlos Goffi, he's been a guest on our podcast. A green light point, for example. You tell kids all the time, hey, you're in the 12 and unders, you're up 40 love. Why don't you hit a body serve? There's no angle coming back and serve and volley. Just go in, go to the net and have some fun. How could you play a year of tennis, 2 years of tennis, singles and doubles, and not venture to the net? But those two guys, Bill Jacobson, Vic Braden, and then the other pillars, we certainly will try to do that. And we'll try to honor the tennis teachers from the past, carry the torch, and through this workshop, shine a bright light on tennis teaching. Any closing comments on those two, Dave?
No, I think that summed it up well. I think they're each in their own way, but they're very linked too. If you really understand it, they're just very connected. And I hope that we can spread the word about them and the other pillars and keep it going, keep it growing.
Yeah, Bill Jacobson, the language. That's what great-base is. It's a language. The ball is hit three ways: plus, minus, IP. From a CT 120, plus is strong, minus is weak, IP is in play. When you miss, Braden, when you miss, you should know why you missed. And it's a mistake correction. The tennis court's a mistake center. No, Dave, I appreciate you contributing to the podcast now on a regular basis and the listeners. So anyway, let's move on. But hopefully you can join us. Please inquire if you have any questions on our upcoming workshop.
Yeah, we'll see you there.
All right. Thanks, everybody.